When we speak of diversity today, we often reduce human beings to categories, race, gender, class, identity markers that supposedly capture who we are. But this misses something fundamental about what it means to be human. There is a distinction I have spent decades exploring, one that determines whether we have genuine politics or merely the administration of populations. The difference between plurality and diversity is not semantic. It is the difference between a world where humans can act together while remaining distinct, and a world where we are sorted into manageable groups. Understanding this distinction changes how we think about democracy, freedom, and what makes political life possible. Today, we explore why plurality is the condition of all political life, and why confusing it with diversity threatens the very foundation of our common world. Chapter 1: What plurality actually means. Plurality is not about having different types of people in the same space. It is about the paradoxical condition that we are all the same, that is, human, and yet nobody who ever lived, lives, or will live will be the same as anyone else. This is the fundamental condition of human existence. We share a common world, yet each of us occupies a unique position within it. When I speak from my experience of statelessness, of losing citizenship and discovering what it means to have no place in the world, I learned that plurality is not a luxury of liberal societies. It is the very condition that makes any society human. Without plurality, we have no politics, only the domination of some humans over others. Think of it this way: if we were all identical, there would be no need for speech or action to reveal who we are. If we were entirely different, like different species, we could not understand each other at all. Plurality exists precisely because we inhabit this paradoxical space, similar enough to build a common world, different enough that each person brings something unprecedented into existence. This is why I distinguish plurality from mere diversity. Diversity often treats difference as a problem to be managed or a resource to be utilized. Organizations speak of diversity and inclusion as if humans were ingredients in a recipe, each contributing their particular flavor to some predetermined outcome. But plurality is not about what we contribute. It is about who we are when we act together in public. In genuine political action, plurality reveals itself when people come together not as representatives of groups, but as individuals who surprise even themselves by what they do and say. Politics begins when people step out of their private roles and identities to appear before others in ways that cannot be predicted or controlled. This appearance is only possible because each person is irreplaceably unique, not as a member of a category, but as someone who has never existed before and never will again. Chapter 2: How Diversity Thinking Destroys Politics. The modern obsession with diversity, well-intentioned as it may be, often undermines the very plurality it claims to protect. When we focus on demographic representation, we reduce the infinite uniqueness of each person to a few measurable characteristics. We begin to think that having the right mixture of backgrounds, identities, or perspectives will automatically produce good outcomes. But this is to confuse human beings with their social roles. A person's race, gender, or cultural background may influence their perspective, but it does not determine who they are when they step into the public realm to speak and act. To assume it does is to deny their capacity for what I call natality, the human ability to begin something new, to act in ways that transcend their circumstances. Consider how diversity initiatives often work in practice. They seek to include representatives from different groups, assuming these representatives will speak and act predictably based on their group membership. A woman is expected to represent women's interests, a person of color to advocate for racial justice, and so forth. While these may be important concerns, this approach treats people as spokespersons for categories rather than as unique individuals capable of surprising us. This reduction of persons to group representatives actually mirrors some of the most dangerous tendencies in modern politics. Totalitarian movements succeed precisely by convincing people that their individual uniqueness matters less than their membership in a race, class, or nation. They promise to eliminate the unpredictability of human action by organizing society around supposedly objective categories. Even in democratic contexts, when we organize politics primarily around group identities, we risk losing sight of what makes political action genuinely political: the capacity of individuals to transcend their given circumstances and create something new together. We end up with a kind of political theater where different groups perform their expected roles rather than engaging in the genuinely surprising encounters that characterize authentic political life. The irony is that this approach, intended to protect human difference, actually diminishes it by making it predictable and manageable. True plurality is always somewhat dangerous to established order because genuinely unique individuals might say or do anything. Diversity management, by contrast, seeks to harness difference for predetermined goals while minimizing its disruptive potential. Chapter 3: The Public Realm Where Plurality Flourishes. For plurality to manifest itself politically, we need what I call a public realm, a space between people where they can appear before one another as the unique individuals they are. This is not simply any space where people gather, nor is it adequately captured by our modern notion of public as opposed to private. The public realm I have in mind is specifically political. It emerges when people come together to speak and act in concert, creating a space that belongs to all of them, yet transcends any individual's control. Think of the American founders meeting to create a constitution, or citizens gathering in town halls to deliberate about their common concerns. In such moments, people reveal who they are through what they say and do. And this revelation is only possible because each person is irreplaceably different from every other. Consider your own experience. Have you ever been in a meeting, discussion, or gathering where something unexpected emerged from the conversation, where people surprised themselves and others by what they said or decided? This is a glimpse of what happens when plurality is allowed to flourish in a public space. Each person's unique perspective, life experience, and capacity for judgment contributes to creating something that none of them could have produced alone. But notice what makes this work. It is not that people represent different demographic categories, but that each person brings their whole self, their capacity for thought, judgment, and action to bear on common concerns. The richness comes not from having the right mix of backgrounds, but from the unpredictable interactions between unique individuals who take responsibility for their shared world. This is why authentic public spaces are always somewhat fragile and rare. They require conditions that protect each person's ability to speak and act freely, without reducing them to their social roles or group memberships. They need what the Greeks called isonomia, not equality in the sense of sameness, but equal opportunity for each person to distinguish themselves through words and deeds. Modern societies often struggle to create and maintain such spaces. Our tendency to organize everything around efficiency, expertise, or representation by category can squeeze out the kind of open-ended political action where plurality truly manifests itself. We end up with spaces that look public but function more like stages for predetermined performances than places where genuine political life can emerge. Chapter 4: Why Algorithms Can't Capture Human Uniqueness. In our digital age, the confusion between plurality and diversity has taken on new dimensions. We live in a world where human uniqueness is increasingly reduced to data points, preferences, behaviors, demographics that can be captured by algorithms and used to predict our actions. This represents perhaps the most sophisticated attempt yet to eliminate the unpredictability that plurality brings to human affairs. Social media platforms promise to connect us across our differences, but they typically work by sorting us into categories based on our expressed preferences and predicted behaviors. The algorithm decides who we should encounter, and what we should see, based on patterns it detects in vast amounts of data. This may create the appearance of diversity. We see content from different sources, interact with various types of people, but it fundamentally undermines plurality. Why? Because the algorithm assumes that your past behavior predicts your future choices, that your demographic characteristics determine your interests, that human beings are essentially predictable entities whose uniqueness can be captured and commodified. But genuine human uniqueness lies precisely in our capacity to act unpredictably, to surprise ourselves and others, to begin something new that breaks from established patterns. When I analyzed the trial of Adolf Eichmann, I was struck by how he had become incapable of thinking for himself, of breaking from the routine expectations of his role. He had, in effect, allowed himself to become algorithmic, predictable, efficient, reducible to his function within a system. This thoughtlessness was not a personal failing, but a symptom of modern societies that increasingly organize human life according to behavioral patterns rather than allowing space for genuine action. The digital realm promises connection and diversity, but it often delivers the opposite: filter bubbles, echo chambers, and increasingly predictable interactions. We become data subjects rather than political actors, consumers of content rather than creators of common worlds. Our differences become products to be marketed rather than sources of the unpredictability that makes political life possible. This is not to romanticize pre-digital politics or to suggest we should abandon technology. Rather, it is to recognize that preserving spaces for genuine plurality requires conscious effort to resist the reduction of human beings to their data profiles. We need to create and protect spaces, both online and offline, where people can appear before one another in their full uniqueness, where surprise and spontaneity remain possible. Chapter 5: The Capacity for Independent Thought. The distinction between plurality and diversity ultimately rests on a deeper question. Do we trust human beings to think for themselves? Or do we assume they will think and act according to their group membership? This question goes to the heart of what I discovered in my study of totalitarianism and what I later explored in examining the trial of Adolf Eichmann. What struck me most about Eichmann was not that he was a monster, but that he had seemingly lost the capacity for independent thought. He spoke in cliches, followed orders, and appeared unable to break from the routine expectations of his social role. This thoughtlessness, his inability to stop and think about what he was doing, enabled him to participate in evil without experiencing it as evil. This taught me that the capacity for thought is not a luxury, but a political necessity. When people stop thinking for themselves, when they begin to function purely according to the expectations of their roles or group memberships, they become incapable of the kind of judgment that political life requires. They may follow rules, implement policies, or advocate for their group's interests, but they cannot engage in the genuinely political activity of creating something new together. Take a moment to consider your own thinking process. When you encounter a complex political issue, do you immediately reach for the position you're supposed to hold based on your background, political affiliation, or social group? Or do you find yourself stopping to think through the particular circumstances, weighing different considerations, perhaps arriving at unexpected conclusions? This capacity to step back from predetermined responses, to think through each situation as if encountering it for the first time, is what I mean by the faculty of judgment. It cannot be reduced to following rules or representing group interests. It requires the kind of mental independence that can only exist when we recognize each person as irreplaceably unique, capable of surprising themselves and others through their thoughts and actions. Genuine plurality depends on this capacity for independent thought. When we assume people will think and act according to their demographic characteristics or group memberships, we deny their ability to transcend these circumstances through thinking. We treat them as though they were natural phenomena to be studied and predicted rather than political beings capable of freedom. This is why diversity thinking, despite its good intentions, can sometimes undermine the very human dignity it seeks to protect. When we organize politics around the assumption that people's backgrounds determine their perspectives, we implicitly deny their capacity to think beyond those backgrounds, to surprise us with insights we didn't expect, to contribute to our common world in ways that transcend their particular circumstances. Chapter 6: Judgment in Political Life. The faculty of judgment is what allows plurality to become politically meaningful rather than simply chaotic. Without judgment, human differences would indeed be merely diverse, interesting perhaps, but not politically significant. Judgment is what enables individuals to navigate their relationships with others while maintaining their own unique perspectives on their shared world. When I write about judgment, I am not referring to the application of universal rules or the calculation of interests. Political judgment is more like what we exercise when we appreciate a work of art or evaluate the character of a friend. We cannot prove our judgments are correct through logical demonstration, yet we can discuss them with others, seek their agreement, and potentially change our minds through such exchanges. Consider how this works in practice. When citizens gather to discuss a local issue, perhaps whether to build a new library or how to address homelessness in their community, they bring different perspectives based on their experiences, values, and understanding of the situation. But if they are engaged in genuine political judgment, they are not simply advocating for predetermined positions based on their group memberships. Instead, each person exercises their capacity to see the situation from multiple angles, to imagine how different proposals might affect various members of their community, to weigh competing values like efficiency, equity, and long-term sustainability. They speak and listen not as representatives of categories, but as individuals capable of thinking through the particular circumstances they face together. This kind of judgment requires what I call thinking without banisters, the willingness to approach each situation freshly rather than applying ready-made theories or group positions. It depends on recognizing that political problems are always particular and unprecedented, requiring the kind of practical wisdom that emerges from genuine deliberation among unique individuals. The capacity for political judgment is what distinguishes genuine democracy from mere majority rule or the aggregation of group interests. In authentic democratic politics, citizens do not simply vote their predetermined preferences, but engage in the difficult work of thinking through complex issues together, allowing their views to be shaped by encounter with others who see things differently. This is why spaces that protect and encourage genuine political judgment are so precious and so rare. They require conditions that allow each person to speak from their own perspective, while remaining open to being changed by what others contribute. They need what the Romans called auctoritas, a kind of authority that enhances rather than diminishes each person's capacity for independent thought and action. When we reduce politics to the management of diversity rather than the cultivation of plurality, we lose these spaces for genuine judgment. We end up with processes that may be fair or inclusive in procedural terms, but lack the substantive engagement between unique individuals that makes political life meaningful. We get representation without the unpredictable encounters that make democratic deliberation more than the sum of its parts. Chapter 7: Natality and New Beginnings. At the heart of human plurality lies what I call natality, the fact that human beings are born, not just into the world, but as beginners capable of initiating something unprecedented. Every birth brings into the world someone who has never existed before and never will again. This capacity for beginning anew is what makes political action possible and necessary. Natality means that human beings are not simply products of their circumstances. Their culture, their family background, their social position, but possess the capacity to transcend these givens through action. When we act politically, we exercise this natal capacity, bringing something new into the world that was not there before. This is why authentic political action always contains an element of surprise, even to the actors themselves. Think about moments of genuine political innovation: the American founding, the civil rights movement, the peaceful revolutions that ended communist rule in Eastern Europe. In each case, people acted in ways that could not have been predicted from their backgrounds or circumstances alone. They exercised their natal capacity to begin something new, creating possibilities that had not existed before. This is what distinguishes human action from mere behavior. Behavior can be studied, predicted, and managed because it follows patterns determined by natural or social forces. Action, by contrast, interrupts these patterns. It is what happens when human beings exercise their uniqueness, not just to express themselves, but to create new realities together. The capacity for natality is what makes each person irreplaceable in political life. It is not that each brings different perspectives based on their background, though they may, but that each possesses the potential to initiate something unprecedented. This potential cannot be captured by demographic categories or predicted by algorithms because it depends on the specifically human capacity to break from established patterns. When we organize politics around diversity rather than plurality, we often miss this natal dimension. We assume that including different types of people will automatically produce better outcomes. But we may not create conditions that allow each person to exercise their capacity for beginning anew. We get representation without the possibility for genuine innovation. Protecting and cultivating human natality requires more than procedural fairness or demographic inclusion. It requires creating and maintaining spaces where people can surprise themselves and others, where the unexpected remains possible, where individuals can step beyond their given roles to create something genuinely new together. This is both the promise and the responsibility of political life: to preserve conditions under which each new generation can exercise its capacity to begin again, to create a world that is genuinely their own while remaining connected to the human past and future. It requires treating each person not as a representative of a category, but as someone capable of contributing something unprecedented to our common world. Conclusion: the distinction between plurality and diversity is not academic. It determines whether we have politics or merely the administration of populations. Plurality recognizes each person as irreplaceably unique, capable of thinking, judging, and acting in ways that surprise even themselves. Diversity, well-intentioned as it may be, often reduces this infinite uniqueness to manageable categories. When we protect genuine plurality, we create space for the unexpected encounters that make political life meaningful. We preserve conditions where people can exercise their natal capacity to begin something new together. This is more challenging than managing diversity, but it is what democracy requires if it is to remain more than a counting of predetermined preferences. The choice is ours. We can organize our common life around the predictable representation of different groups. Or we can take the more difficult path of creating spaces where unique individuals can appear before one another in all their unprecedented complexity. Only the latter preserves the possibility for genuine political action and the renewal that each generation brings to human affairs.